The Tower of Destiny. Joanna Blake stood on the sidewalk outside West Enterprises Tower, her hand gripping her daughter's tiny fingers while her other hand clutched her worn leather portfolio. The morning sun reflected off the glass and steel structure that pierced the Manhattan skyline like a crystal sword. At 28, Joanna had learned that life rarely offered second chances, which made this interview feel like a lifeline thrown to a drowning woman. 3 years of freelance consulting work had kept the bills paid, but barely. Her small apartment in Queens was clean but cramped, and every month was a juggling act between rent, daycare, and groceries. This position as senior marketing director at West Enterprises would change everything. The salary alone was triple what she currently made, with benefits that included health insurance and a retirement plan. Things she desperately needed for Amelia's future. A mother's dilemma. Amelia tugged at her hand, her curly brown hair bouncing as she looked up at the towering building. The 3-year-old wore her best dress, a pink cotton number with white flowers that Joanna had found at a thrift store and carefully mended. Her daughter's innocence was both a blessing and a burden today. Joanna's parents were celebrating their 40th anniversary on a cruise, something they had saved for years to afford. Her younger brother lived in California, too far to help. Every other backup option had fallen through. The daycare had called early that morning with a burst pipe emergency, closing for the day. Joanna had stood in her tiny kitchen, phone in hand, tears threatening to fall as she realized she had no choice but to bring Amelia to the most important interview of her career. She had called the HR department, explained the situation with profuse apologies, and been told tersely that rescheduling would mean losing her spot. The position had attracted over 200 applicants. It was today or never. Entering another world. The lobby of West Enterprises was a temple to wealth and power. Marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers. The reception desk was a curved masterpiece of dark wood and chrome. Well-dressed professionals moved through the space with purpose, their shoes clicking efficiently against the stone. Joanna felt distinctly out of place in her department store suit, even though she had pressed it carefully that morning. Amelia's eyes were wide as she took in the spectacle. A massive fountain in the center of the lobby featured abstract bronze sculptures, water cascading down in sheets. The little girl pointed at it with delight, momentarily forgetting to be intimidated by the grandeur around her. Joanna approached the security desk, signed in, and received visitor badges. The guard directed her to the executive elevator bank on the far side of the lobby. Her heels sounded too loud to her own ears as she walked, Amelia's small hand warm and slightly sticky in hers. The elevator encounter. The elevator doors were polished brass, reflecting distorted images of the lobby. Joanna pressed the button for the 42nd floor, where the executive offices resided. Her stomach churned with nervousness. She had rehearsed her presentation 100 times, memorized every detail of West Enterprises' recent campaigns, and prepared answers to every conceivable question. But nothing had prepared her for bringing her daughter into a corporate battlefield. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. The doors opened to reveal 2 people already inside. Joanna's breath caught in her throat, and the world seemed to tilt sideways. Nathan West stood in the elevator, tall and commanding in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His dark hair was styled perfectly, his jawline sharp, his presence filling the space with an almost physical force. But it was his eyes that struck her like lightning. Those same intense hazel eyes that had looked at her across a crowded charity gala 4 years ago. The eyes that had held hers as they danced, talked, and eventually left together for a night that had changed her life forever. Next to him stood a woman who could have stepped from the pages of a fashion magazine. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders. Her cream-colored suit was clearly designer, her jewelry understated but obviously expensive. A diamond ring on her left hand caught the light, massive and brilliant. This had to be Rebecca Lang, the woman whose engagement to Nathan had been splashed across society pages 2 years ago. A ghost from the past. Joanna's instinct was to turn and run, to wait for another elevator, to avoid this confrontation entirely. But Amelia was already stepping forward, pulling her mother along. There was no escape. Joanna entered the elevator, positioning herself in the far corner, her heart hammering so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. Nathan was speaking to Rebecca in low tones about an upcoming board meeting. His voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep and confident. He had called her a few times after their night together, but his calls had grown less frequent. By the time Joanna discovered she was pregnant, the news of his engagement was already circulating. She had made the decision then to disappear from his world, to raise her child alone rather than be the scandal that destroyed his carefully planned life. She had never expected to see him again. Certainly not like this. The child's innocent question. The elevator began its smooth ascent. Joanna kept her eyes on the floor numbers lighting up above the doors. 30. 31. 32. Each floor felt like an eternity. Amelia, bored with silence, tugged at her mother's sleeve. Then the little girl looked up at Nathan with the fearless curiosity only a 3-year-old possessed. "You are really tall," Amelia announced, her voice clear in the quiet space. Rebecca glanced down with a polite but cold smile. Nathan, however, looked at the child with surprise. A genuine smile crossed his face, transforming his serious expression into something warmer. "Thank you," he replied, his voice gentler than before. "You have very good manners." Amelia beamed at the compliment. Then she pointed at the watch on his wrist. "That is so shiny. Like stars." Nathan chuckled, glancing at the expensive timepiece. "I suppose it is." Joanna wanted to disappear into the elevator wall. She could feel Nathan's attention shifting, his gaze moving from Amelia to her. She kept her face turned slightly away, hoping against hope that 4 years and the stress of single motherhood had changed her appearance enough that he would not recognize her. Recognition dawns. But then Nathan's eyes met hers, and she saw the exact moment recognition hit. His smile faltered. His eyes widened slightly. He stared at her with an intensity that made her skin flush hot and cold simultaneously. "Joanna," he said, her name a question and an accusation all at once. Rebecca's head turned sharply, her eyes narrowing as she assessed this unexpected development. The temperature in the elevator seemed to drop 10 degrees. Joanna forced herself to meet his gaze. "Hello, Nathan." The use of his first name clearly surprised him. Rebecca's expression shifted from cold curiosity to active suspicion. "You two know each other?" Rebecca asked, her tone carefully controlled but with an edge sharp enough to cut. Nathan did not answer immediately. He was looking at Amelia again, really looking this time. Joanna watched his face as his brilliant mind began to calculate. The child's age. The timing. The eyes that were staring back at him, hazel flecked with gold, an exact mirror of his own. The elevator chimed. 42nd floor. The doors slid open. The moment of truth. "This is our stop," Rebecca said, her hand on Nathan's arm, trying to guide him out. But Nathan did not move. He was frozen, staring at Amelia with an expression Joanna had never seen before. Shock. Wonder. And the beginning of understanding. "Nathan," Rebecca said again, more insistent. Amelia waved at him cheerfully. "Bye-bye, tall man." That simple gesture seemed to break whatever spell held him. Nathan stepped out of the elevator, but he turned back immediately, his eyes finding Joanna's. "What floor?" he asked, his voice hoarse. 42nd, Joanna replied quietly. His jaw tightened. He knew she was here for an interview. At his company. The company he controlled absolutely. Rebecca was pulling him away now, clearly irritated and confused. The elevator doors began to close, but not before Joanna saw Nathan mouth something to the executive assistant hovering nearby. The doors shut. Joanna sagged against the wall, her legs suddenly weak. Amelia looked up at her with concern. "Mama? Are you okay?" Joanna knelt down, pulling her daughter into a tight hug. "Yes, baby. Mama is okay." But she was not okay. Nothing was okay. The man she had spent 4 years trying to forget, the man who had given her the greatest gift of her life without ever knowing it, was somewhere on this floor. And in a few minutes, she would have to walk into an office and pretend that her entire world had not just been turned upside down. The elevator opened to the executive reception area. A sleek desk stood before floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a breathtaking view of Manhattan. A professional woman in a navy suit approached with a tablet in hand. "Miss Blake? Welcome to West Enterprises. Please follow me." Joanna took Amelia's hand and stepped forward, walking into an unknown future where the past had just collided with the present in the most dramatic way possible. The waiting game. The reception area of West Enterprises' executive floor was designed to intimidate. Leather chairs in rich burgundy lined the walls beneath modern art pieces that probably cost more than Joanna's car. A coffee table held perfectly fanned magazines about finance and business. Everything was calculated to remind visitors that they were in the presence of serious money and power. Joanna sat with Amelia on her lap, trying to keep her daughter entertained with a coloring book she had brought in her bag. The receptionist, a polished woman named Helen, had offered them water and cookies, which Amelia had accepted with enthusiastic gratitude. At least her daughter was comfortable, even if Joanna felt like her insides were being twisted into knots. Every time footsteps approached down the hallway, Joanna's heart leaped. Was it Nathan? Would he confront her here, in front of his staff? Would he have her thrown out? Worse, would he pretend nothing had happened and let someone else conduct the interview? 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Joanna checked her phone repeatedly, wondering if they had forgotten about her or if this was some kind of power play. Amelia was getting restless, squirming in her lap and asking when they could go home. "Soon, sweetheart," Joanna whispered, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "Mama just needs to talk to some people about work first." The summons finally, Helen looked up from her computer screen with an expression that seemed almost apologetic. "Miss Blake? There has been a change in the interview schedule. Mr. West will be conducting your interview personally." Joanna's stomach dropped. "Mr. West? I thought I was meeting with Patricia Hughes from Human Resources." There was a last-minute adjustment, Helen replied smoothly, though Joanna detected a hint of curiosity in her eyes. Working for Nathan West, Helen probably saw everything and missed nothing. "Mr. West takes personal interest in all senior leadership hires. Please follow me." This was not protocol. This was Nathan inserting himself into a situation he wanted to control. Joanna stood on shaking legs, gathering Amelia and her materials. Her daughter clutched her hand as they walked down a corridor lined with photographs of West Enterprises' various achievements and acquisitions. They stopped before massive double doors made of dark wood. Helen knocked once, then opened the door, gesturing for Joanna to enter. "Good luck," Helen said quietly, and there was genuine warmth in her voice. Face-to-face Nathan's office was exactly what Joanna would have expected. Enormous windows overlooked the city, giving the impression that he ruled over Manhattan itself. His desk was a masterpiece of glass and steel, with dual monitors displaying financial data. Bookshelves lined one wall, filled with leather-bound volumes on economics, business strategy, and surprisingly, art history. A sitting area featured a modern couch and chairs around a low table. Nathan stood by the windows, his back to the door. He had removed his suit jacket, and his white shirt was crisp against his broad shoulders. Even from behind, he radiated tension. "Close the door," he said without turning around. Joanna did as instructed, keeping Amelia close. Her daughter was staring around the office with wide eyes, momentarily silenced by the sheer scale of the space. Nathan turned slowly. His face was a carefully controlled mask, but his eyes burned with barely suppressed emotion. He looked at Amelia first, studying her with an intensity that made Joanna want to shield her child. Then his gaze shifted to Joanna, and she felt the full weight of his attention like a physical force. "Sit down," he said, his voice clipped. Joanna moved to one of the chairs facing his desk. Amelia climbed into her lap, sensing the tension in the air. Nathan walked to his desk but did not sit. Instead, he leaned against it, arms crossed, towering over them. The confrontation begins. The silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Joanna could hear the clock on the wall ticking, could hear her own heartbeat pounding in her ears. She refused to speak first. This was his office, his company, his move. "How old is she?" Nathan finally asked, his voice low and controlled. 3, Joanna replied quietly. "When is her birthday?" "March 15th. Nathan's jaw clenched. She watched him do the mental calculation, counting back 9 months from March. That would put conception around June. 4 years ago. Right when they had spent that night together at the Peninsula Hotel after the Children's Hospital Charity Gala. "What is her full name?" "Amelia Rose Blake." "Blake. Your last name." It was not a question. It was an observation laced with accusation. "Not West." Joanna lifted her chin. "You were engaged 2 months after that night, Nathan. The society pages were full of your upcoming wedding to Rebecca Lang. What was I supposed to do? Show up at your office, pregnant, and ruin your carefully planned merger marriage?" The words came out more bitter than she intended. Nathan's eyes flashed with something that might have been anger or might have been pain. "Merger marriage," he repeated slowly. "Is that what you think my relationship is?" "I think your relationship is none of my business," Joanna said firmly. "Just like my daughter was none of yours. You moved on. I moved on. End of story." "End of story?" Nathan pushed off from the desk, his voice rising slightly before he caught himself and glanced at Amelia. The little girl was watching him with curious interest, not fear. He took a breath and lowered his voice again. "You kept my child from me for 3 years, and you call that the end of the story?" A mother's defense. Joanna felt anger surge through her, washing away the nervousness. She had spent 3 years raising Amelia alone, through sleepless nights and childhood illnesses, through first words and first steps. She had sacrificed her career, her social life, everything for her daughter. And now Nathan wanted to act like the victim? "I kept my daughter safe," she said, her voice steady despite the emotions roiling inside her. "I gave her a stable, loving home. I made sure she never felt like a mistake or a burden. Yes, I raised her alone. Yes, it was hard. But I did what I thought was right given the circumstances. The circumstances being my engagement. The circumstances being that we barely knew each other," Joanna corrected. "We had one night, Nathan. One incredible night, yes. But one night. We were not in a relationship. We were not building a future together. You were a billionaire on a completely different plane of existence, and I was just someone you met at a party. You were never just someone." The words came out harsh, almost angry. Nathan ran a hand through his hair, disrupting its perfect styling. "I called you. Multiple times. You stopped answering. Because I saw where it was going," Joanna said. "You were going to marry Rebecca. Your families had probably planned it for years. I was a distraction, Nathan. A pleasant distraction, but still just that. I was not going to be the other woman, and I was certainly not going to trap you with a pregnancy." The question of proof. Nathan stared at her for a long moment. Then he moved around his desk and sat down heavily in his chair. He pulled open a drawer, extracted a business card, and slid it across the glass surface toward her. "My attorney. Call him tomorrow. We will arrange a paternity test." Joanna's hands tightened around Amelia. "A paternity test? You cannot expect me to simply take your word for it," Nathan said, though his tone had softened slightly. I need confirmation. Legal confirmation. Look at her, Nathan. Joanna turned Amelia gently so she faced him. Look at her eyes. Look at her face. She looks exactly like the photos of you as a child that were in that magazine profile. You know she is yours. Nathan did look. Really looked. And Joanna saw his expression crack, saw the wonder and fear and fierce protectiveness that she recognized because she felt it every single day as a mother. Amelia, sensing the attention, smiled at him shyly. Hi, she said softly. Are you Mama's friend? Nathan's breath caught audibly. I hope so, he managed to say. What is your favorite color, Amelia? Purple, she announced proudly. And pink. And sometimes yellow. Those are excellent choices. Nathan's voice was gentle now, so different from the harsh executive tone of moments before. Do you like books? Amelia nodded enthusiastically. Mama reads to me every night. Right now we are reading about a caterpillar who eats too much. The very hungry caterpillar, Nathan said, and something like a smile touched his lips. That was one of my favorites when I was little. Joanna watched the interaction with a mixture of relief and terror. This was what she had feared and hoped for in equal measure. Nathan connecting with Amelia. The inevitable bond forming. Once that happened, everything would change. The job offer. Nathan pulled his attention away from Amelia with visible effort. He opened a folder on his desk and glanced at the papers inside. Joanna recognized her resume, her portfolio samples, the proposal she had submitted with her application. You are overqualified for the position you applied for, Nathan said, shifting into business mode. Your work with the tech startups in Brooklyn shows innovative thinking. Your campaign for the nonprofit housing initiative won awards. You could be running an entire department, not just managing one segment. Joanna was not sure where this was going. I have been out of the corporate world for 3 years. I thought it best to start at a reasonable level and work my way up. And you picked my company. Out of all the firms in New York, you applied here. Nathan leaned back in his chair, studying her. Coincidence? Completely, Joanna said honestly. I had no idea you were this involved in day-to-day operations. The job listing did not mention your name. I saw a good position at a reputable company and I applied. That is all. Nathan tapped his fingers on the desk, thinking. The silence stretched again. Finally, he spoke. I am going to offer you the position. Senior Marketing Director, reporting directly to me. The salary is $180,000 annually, with full benefits, 4 weeks paid vacation, and a performance bonus structure that could add another $50,000 if you meet targets. Joanna's breath caught. That was nearly twice what the original posting had listed. However, Nathan continued, his eyes hard, there are conditions. Of course there are, Joanna said quietly. The devil's bargain. Nathan stood and walked to the window, his back to them again. I want time with Amelia. Supervised at first, obviously. I understand that I am a stranger to her and that needs to change gradually. But I want to be her father, Joanna. Not in secret. Not hidden away. I want to be part of her life. And what about Rebecca? Joanna asked. What about your engagement? My relationship with Rebecca is complicated, Nathan said without turning around. But that is my problem to solve, not yours. What I need from you is access to my daughter and the truth about these past 3 years. The truth is that I did the best I could, Joanna said, feeling tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. I worked multiple jobs. I lived on savings and then on freelance income. My parents helped when they could, but they are retired and on a fixed income. Every month was a struggle. Every doctor visit, every new pair of shoes, every daycare payment was a calculation. But Amelia never went without love. She never felt unwanted. And I would do it all again exactly the same way because she is worth everything. Nathan turned back to face her, and there was raw emotion on his face now. I believe you, he said hoarsely. I believe you did everything right. But you should not have had to do it alone. That is on me. I should have fought harder to stay in contact. I should have questioned why you stopped answering my calls. I should have known. How could you have known? Joanna asked. I made sure you would not. The agreement. Nathan returned to his desk and pulled out a legal pad. He began writing quickly, his handwriting bold and decisive. When he finished, he turned the pad toward Joanna. These are my terms. You work here. You bring Amelia to the office daycare we have on the 10th floor. It is the best in the city, and it will be free for you. Every Wednesday and Saturday, I have time with Amelia. We start with 1-hour sessions in public places, parks or museums. As she gets comfortable with me, we increase the time. Within 3 months, I want overnight visits. Within 6 months, I want to establish a formal custody arrangement. Joanna read the terms, her mind racing. And if I refuse? Then I contact my lawyers tonight and we do this the hard way, Nathan said bluntly. I have unlimited resources, Joanna. I can tie you up in court for years. I do not want to do that. I do not want to hurt you or scare Amelia. But I will not be shut out of my daughter's life. Not anymore. It was a threat delivered calmly, rationally. The threat of a man who was used to getting what he wanted. Joanna looked down at Amelia, who was playing with a small toy she had pulled from her pocket, oblivious to the negotiation happening over her future. Then she looked back at Nathan. I have conditions too, she said. Nathan raised an eyebrow. Go on. You do not tell anyone about Amelia until we have figured out how to do this properly. I will not have her exposed to media attention or society gossip. She is 3 years old. She deserves privacy and normalcy. Agreed. You do not make promises to her that you cannot keep. If you commit to being her father, you commit fully. No disappearing when it gets inconvenient or when your real life gets too busy. She gets all of you or none of you. Nathan's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. And this job? It is a real job. I am not your employee because I am your child's mother. I am your employee because I am damn good at what I do. You treat me like any other member of your team. No special favors, no exceptions. With one exception, Nathan said. Flexible hours when Amelia needs you. That is non-negotiable. I will not have my daughter suffer because I am forcing her mother to work insane hours. Joanna considered this. It was fair. More than fair. She nodded slowly. Then we have an agreement. Nathan extended his hand across the desk. Joanna stood, shifting Amelia to her hip, and shook his hand. The contact was brief but electric. For years had not diminished the attraction. If anything, the tension and drama had intensified it. His hand was warm, strong, and the touch sent memories flooding back. The Peninsula Hotel. His lips on her neck. The way he had whispered her name. She pulled her hand back quickly, her cheeks flushing. The interrupted moment. There was a sharp knock at the door. Before Nathan could respond, it opened. Rebecca Lang stood in the doorway, her expression ice cold. She looked at Joanna, at Amelia, and then at Nathan with accusation in her eyes. Your assistant said you were conducting a personal interview, Rebecca said, her tone clipped. I did not realize it was this personal. Nathan's expression closed off immediately, becoming the unreadable mask of the corporate executive. Rebecca, this is Joanna Blake. She is our new senior marketing director. Joanna, you have met my fiancée, Rebecca Lang. Rebecca's eyes narrowed as she studied Joanna more carefully. Blake. I feel like I have heard that name before. Common name, Joanna said quickly, her heart racing. Rebecca's attention shifted to Amelia. And who is this? My daughter, Amelia, Joanna said, pulling her child closer protectively. The daycare had an emergency today. I apologize for the unprofessional circumstances. How old? Rebecca asked, and there was something calculating in her voice. 3. Rebecca looked at Nathan. Something passed between them, a wordless communication that Joanna could not interpret. Then Rebecca smiled, though it did not reach her eyes. How lovely. Well, welcome to West Enterprises, Miss Blake. I am sure you will find it very interesting to work here. The emphasis on interesting was not lost on anyone in the room. She turned to Nathan. Darling, we have the appointment with the wedding planner in 30 minutes. We should leave now if we are going to make it. Nathan glanced at Joanna, conflict clear in his eyes. Then he nodded. Of course. Joanna, Helen will help you with all the paperwork and orientation. You start Monday. Thank you, Mr. West, Joanna said formally. Rebecca linked her arm through Nathan's possessively. As they walked toward the door, Rebecca looked back over her shoulder at Joanna. Her smile was sharp as a knife. It was so nice to meet you and your daughter, she said. I am sure we will be seeing much more of each other. The door closed behind them. Joanna sank back into the chair, her legs suddenly weak. Amelia looked up at her with concern. Mama? Can we go home now? Joanna kissed her daughter's forehead. Yes, baby. Let us go home. But as she gathered her things and prepared to leave, she knew that nothing about her life would ever be simple again. She had walked into this building looking for a job. She was leaving with so much more. A job that paid well. A confrontation that had been 3 years in the making. And the beginning of a complicated relationship with the one man who had the power to destroy or save her carefully constructed world. The elevator ride down felt like a descent back into reality. In 42 floors, Joanna had to figure out how to be a professional, a mother, and somehow navigate the dangerous waters of working for the father of her child while his fiancée watched with suspicious eyes. Outside, the Manhattan afternoon sun was bright and harsh. Joanna put on her sunglasses, held Amelia's hand, and walked toward the subway station. Behind her, West Enterprises Tower gleamed in the sunlight, a monument to power and wealth. And somewhere in that tower, Nathan West was facing questions from his fiancée that would have no easy answers, the new normal. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crisp autumn air that made Manhattan feel alive with possibility. Joanna dressed carefully in a new navy suit she had splurged on over the weekend, knowing that appearances mattered in Nathan's world. Amelia wore her favorite purple dress, excited about the new daycare that her mother had promised would have more toys than she could count. The morning routine was familiar but different now. Instead of walking 6 blocks to the old daycare in Queens, they took the subway into Manhattan. Instead of a converted brownstone with worn carpets and cheerful murals, they entered a gleaming tower where everything smelled like money and ambition. The daycare on the 10th floor was everything Joanna had been told and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows filled the space with natural light. Age-appropriate play areas were divided by low shelves stocked with educational toys and books. The staff wore professional uniforms and had credentials posted on the wall. A chef prepared organic meals in a spotless kitchen visible through a glass wall. This was not just daycare. This was early childhood enrichment for the children of executives and high-level employees. Amelia's eyes went wide as she took it all in. A young teacher named Miss Caroline knelt down to greet her, asking about her favorite activities and showing her the art corner filled with supplies. Within minutes, Amelia was happily occupied with finger paints and new friends. Joanna signed the paperwork, received a detailed schedule of activities, and was given an access card that would allow her to visit anytime during business hours. The director, a kind woman named Mrs. Patterson, assured her that they had experience with anxious parents and that Amelia would receive excellent care. Mr. West personally oversees this program, Mrs. Patterson said with obvious pride. He believes that supporting working parents is essential to a successful company culture. Joanna wondered if Nathan had always felt this way or if learning about Amelia had suddenly made childcare a priority. The first day. The marketing department occupied the 38th floor. Joanna's office was modest but well appointed, with a desk, computer, and a window that overlooked the East River. Her team consisted of 6 people, all of whom introduced themselves with varying degrees of curiosity about the new director who had been hired so suddenly. Her assistant, a sharp young woman named Tessa, walked her through the current campaigns, budget spreadsheets, and upcoming deadlines. The work was challenging and interesting, exactly the kind of strategic thinking Joanna had missed during her freelance years. She dove into it gratefully, letting the familiar rhythm of corporate work steady her nerves. At 11:30, her desk phone rang. It was Helen from the executive floor. "Miss Blake, Mr. West would like to see you in his office at noon for a project briefing." Joanna's stomach tightened. "Of course. I will be there." She spent the next 30 minutes reviewing West Enterprises' recent marketing initiatives so she would not look unprepared. But she knew this meeting was not really about marketing. The delicate dance. Nathan's office looked different in daylight. The city spread below like a map of possibilities, the river glinting silver in the distance. Nathan stood by the windows, hands in his pockets, looking every inch the powerful executive in his perfectly tailored suit. "Close the door," he said without turning around. Joanna did, her heartbeat quickening. The space suddenly felt intimate despite its size. Nathan turned to face her. "How is Amelia?" "She loves the daycare," Joanna admitted. "She was painting when I dropped her off and barely noticed when I left." Something like relief crossed Nathan's face. "Good. That is good." He gestured to the sitting area. "Please, sit. We should talk about the arrangement." They sat across from each other, the coffee table between them a neutral zone. Nathan pulled out his phone and opened his calendar. "Wednesday afternoons, I can block off from 2 to 5. We could take Amelia to Central Park. There is a playground near the conservatory that is usually quiet. Saturday mornings, 9 to noon. I thought perhaps the Natural History Museum or the Children's Zoo." He was planning methodically, approaching fatherhood like a business project. It was typical Nathan, Joanna thought. Control the variables. Manage the risks. Achieve the desired outcome. "That works," she said. "But Nathan, you need to understand something. She is 3. She does not care about schedules or plans. If she is tired or cranky, we will need to be flexible." "I understand." He met her eyes, and there was vulnerability there she had not expected. "I have been reading books about child development and parenting. I want to do this right." The admission touched something in Joanna's heart. He was trying. Really trying. "You will make mistakes," she said gently. "Every parent does. What matters is showing up and being consistent. Like you have been for 3 years." There was no accusation in his voice this time, only acknowledgement. "I called my attorney. The paternity test can be done with a simple cheek swab. It is painless and quick. I would like to arrange it this week." "Fine," Joanna agreed, though the word tasted bitter. The test was a formality. They both knew the truth. But Nathan needed legal documentation, needed facts and evidence. That was who he was. The professional mask. The conversation shifted to actual work. Nathan wanted a complete overhaul of West Enterprises' public image. The company was known for aggressive acquisitions and cold efficiency. He wanted to soften that perception, to highlight the company's charitable initiatives and employee programs. Joanna took notes, her mind already spinning with ideas. This was a significant campaign, the kind of high-profile project that could define her career. It was also clearly a test. Nathan was watching her, evaluating whether she could separate personal drama from professional excellence. "I will have a proposal ready by Friday," she said confidently. "Full strategy, sample concepts, budget projections." "I know you will." Nathan's gaze held hers for a moment too long. The air between them thickened with unspoken words. For years ago, they had fit together perfectly, their chemistry instant and overwhelming. That pull had not faded. If anything, the added layers of complexity made it stronger. Joanna stood abruptly. "If that is all, I should get back to my team." "Yes. That is all." Nathan stood as well, maintaining professional distance. But his eyes tracked her movement as she walked to the door. "Joanna." She turned back. "Thank you for giving me this chance." She nodded, not trusting her voice, and left quickly. The growing suspicion. The weeks that followed established a strange new rhythm. Joanna excelled at her job, impressing Nathan's executive team with her innovative campaigns and strategic thinking. Amelia thrived in the daycare, making friends and coming home each day with art projects and stories. And Nathan began the slow process of becoming part of his daughter's life. The Wednesday and Saturday visits were carefully orchestrated. The first few times, Amelia was shy, clinging to Joanna and watching Nathan with curious but cautious eyes. He was patient, following Joanna's lead, letting Amelia set the pace. He brought books instead of expensive toys. He asked questions instead of making demands. Slowly, gradually, Amelia warmed to him. By the third week, she took his hand willingly as they walked through the park. By the fourth, she asked if the nice man was coming on Saturday. She did not call him father yet. That would come with time. But the foundation was being built. At work, Joanna maintained strict professionalism. She never visited Nathan's office unless summoned for a meeting. She never referenced their personal situation in front of colleagues. But others were starting to notice the special attention. The way Nathan always asked her opinion in strategy sessions. The way his eyes followed her when she presented ideas. The preferential scheduling that allowed her to leave exactly at 5 to pick up Amelia. Rebecca noticed most of all. The gala invitation. The crisis came in the form of an engraved invitation delivered to Joanna's desk on a Thursday afternoon. West Enterprises was hosting its annual charity gala, a black-tie event that raised millions for various educational programs. All senior leadership was expected to attend. Joanna stared at the invitation with growing dread. A formal event meant seeing Nathan in his element, surrounded by his world. It meant seeing him with Rebecca, playing the role of devoted fiancé. It meant pretending that everything was normal when nothing about their situation was normal. She could not refuse without drawing suspicion. But accepting meant walking into a minefield. That evening, after putting Amelia to bed, Joanna called her best friend, Michelle, who had known her since college and knew the whole complicated story. "You have to go," Michelle said practically. "You are senior leadership now. Not going would be weird. Just stay for a couple hours, schmooze with colleagues, and leave early." "He will be there with her," Joanna said miserably. "With his fiancée. And I will have to watch them together and smile like it does not bother me." "Does it bother you?" Michelle asked gently. "Still?" Joanna closed her eyes. That was the question she had been avoiding. The truth was that working closely with Nathan these past weeks had reminded her of everything she had liked about him 4 years ago. His intelligence, his dry humor, his unexpected moments of kindness. Watching him with Amelia had added new layers. He was gentle with their daughter, patient and earnest in his desire to build a relationship. It would be so easy to fall for him again. If she was honest, she had never completely stopped. It does not matter if it bothers me, Joanna finally said. He is with someone else. He is building a life that does not include me. I am just the mother of his child. That is all I can be. Are you sure that is all he wants you to be? Michelle asked. The dress. Joanna bought a dress she could not afford at a consignment shop that specialized in designer gowns. It was midnight blue silk that hugged her curves and fell to the floor in elegant lines. With her hair styled up and borrowed diamond earrings from Michelle, she looked like she belonged in Nathan's world. The gala was held at the Plaza Hotel in the Grand Ballroom, a space that dripped with old money glamour. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over tables draped in white linen. A string quartet played classical music. Men in tuxedos and women in couture gowns moved through the space with practiced ease. Joanna arrived alone, checked her coat, and stepped into the ballroom feeling like an imposter despite her careful preparation. She recognized colleagues and made her way to the West Enterprises table, accepting champagne from a passing waiter. Tessa from her team greeted her enthusiastically. Joanna. You look amazing. That dress is stunning. They fell into easy conversation about work, and Joanna began to relax. This was not so bad. She could handle one evening. Then Nathan arrived with Rebecca on his arm. The perfect couple. They were stunning together. Nathan in a custom tuxedo that emphasized his height and broad shoulders. Rebecca in a red gown that probably cost more than Joanna's car, with diamonds at her throat and wrists that caught the light with every movement. They looked like they belonged on the cover of a society magazine. Old money and new money united in a perfect partnership. Rebecca's hand rested possessively on Nathan's arm. She smiled and chatted with guests, working the room with the ease of someone born to this world. Nathan played his role perfectly, the attentive fiancé, introducing Rebecca to business partners and board members. But Joanna saw the moments when his smile did not reach his eyes. The way his gaze scanned the room restlessly. The tension in his shoulders. Their eyes met across the ballroom. For a brief moment, everything else faded away. It was just the two of them, connected by invisible threads of shared history and a daughter who carried both their features. Then someone claimed Nathan's attention, and the moment broke. The confrontation. Joanna made it through dinner seated at a table with her marketing team, far from the head table where Nathan and Rebecca held court. She listened to speeches about the importance of education funding and watched the silent auction results announced. She was planning her escape when Rebecca appeared at her elbow. Miss Blake, how lovely to see you here. Rebecca's smile was perfectly polite and perfectly cold. I was hoping we might have a word in private. Joanna's stomach dropped, but she maintained her composure. Of course. Rebecca led her away from the ballroom into a quiet corridor lined with portraits of previous plaza owners. Once they were alone, Rebecca's smile disappeared. Let us skip the pleasantries, Rebecca said bluntly. I know Nathan is your daughter's father. Joanna felt the blood drain from her face. I do not know what you mean. Please. I am not stupid. Rebecca's voice was sharp. The timeline matches perfectly. You stopped answering his calls 4 years ago, right when our engagement was announced. You show up at his company with a child who has his exact eyes. He personally hires you for a senior position and moves you to a schedule that accommodates childcare. I had my investigator confirm everything else. You had me investigated? Joanna felt anger spark through her shock. Of course I did. I protect my interests. Rebecca studied her with calculating eyes. What surprises me is that you never asked for money. Most women in your situation would have demanded child support, threatened exposure, leveraged the situation for everything they could get. But you disappeared completely. Why? Joanna lifted her chin. Because I did not want his money. I wanted my daughter to grow up without being a scandal or a bargaining chip. I wanted her to have a normal life. How noble. Rebecca's tone was mocking. And now? Now that you are working for him, seeing him regularly, playing house with your little family visits to the park. We are not playing house, Joanna said firmly. Nathan is getting to know his daughter. That is all. Is it? Rebecca stepped closer, her voice dropping to a harsh whisper. Do you think I have not seen the way he looks at you? The way he hovers around your office? The special treatment you receive? You may have fooled yourself into thinking this is just about the child, but I know better. Nathan is getting attached. To both of you. And that is not acceptable. The ultimatum. What do you want? Joanna asked tiredly. She was exhausted from weeks of juggling impossible situations, from pretending she did not feel anything when she saw Nathan, from trying to protect Amelia while giving Nathan access. I want you gone, Rebecca said simply. Leave West Enterprises. Take a generous severance package. I will have my lawyers draw up a custody agreement that gives Nathan limited visitation rights on a schedule that does not interfere with our life. You get money and security. He gets to see his daughter occasionally. I get my fiancé back without distractions. And if I refuse? Rebecca's smile was a weapon. Then I will make your life miserable. I have connections throughout this industry. I can make sure you never work in New York again. I can leak your story to the press and turn your daughter into a tabloid curiosity. I can drag you through courts until you are buried in legal fees. Do not test me, Miss Blake. I always win. Joanna stared at this woman who represented everything she was not. Wealthy, connected, ruthless. Rebecca fought for what she wanted without hesitation or mercy. I need to think about it, Joanna said finally. You have until Monday. Rebecca smoothed her dress, her polite mask sliding back into place. Enjoy the rest of your evening. She walked away, leaving Joanna alone in the corridor, her heart pounding and her mind racing. The choice. Joanna returned to the ballroom, grabbed her coat, and left without saying goodbye to anyone. She took a cab home despite the expense, needing the quiet darkness to think. Everything she had built in the past weeks was threatened. The job she had worked so hard to excel at. The fragile relationship forming between Nathan and Amelia. Her own confused feelings that she had tried so hard to suppress. Rebecca was right about one thing. This could not continue as it was. Something had to change. Someone had to make a choice. At home, Joanna checked on Amelia, who was sleeping peacefully at her parents' apartment where she stayed during late work events. Her daughter looked so innocent, so untouched by adult complications. She deserved better than to be caught in this web of old relationships and new conflicts. Joanna's phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. Where did you go? Rebecca said you left early. Joanna stared at the message. 3 dots appeared, showing he was typing more. We need to talk. Not about work. About us. About what happens next. Us. There was an us. That was the problem and the hope all at once. Joanna typed a response. Monday. Your office. Early. We decide everything then. She sent it before she could reconsider. Nathan's reply came immediately. I will be there. Whatever you need. Joanna set down the phone and walked to her window. Manhattan glittered below, a city of millions of stories, millions of choices made every day. Tomorrow she would have to make her own choice. Protect her daughter and walk away from the complicated feelings that grew stronger every day. Or stay and fight for something that might never be possible. But tonight, she let herself feel everything she had been suppressing. The longing. The fear. The impossible hope that maybe, somehow, they could find a way through this mess. The city lights blurred as tears finally came. Joanna cried for the girl she had been 4 years ago, for the mother she had become, and for the woman she might never get to be. Monday morning would bring answers. But tonight, she just let herself feel.